Just about everybody will tell you that love is probably the most powerful thing in the world. But I have a question for you. What makes it that way? Why is that true?
The things you love make it that way. The things that are precious to you make. The things that you love or that are precious to you, that's how you feel about them. You love them.
Well, you always feel better love than hate, you know, the opposite's pretty awful.
Okay, that's good. Go on.
He's chewing thoroughly.
Well, maybe we should say something biblical like God is love. Maybe we should throw that out for what it's worth.
Well, I
Well,
mean,
when you show your love, you are at your best in terms of societal norms.
Yeah.
Love
Even-
makes you feel better than hate.
yes, well, that's the same kind of thing Carol was saying, and in that case, even not considering societal norms, I mean, even, you know, expressing love is a very
Well, you
positive
express
thing.
love if someone expresses love back to you. You just, you know,
And
No, there
when,
is unrequited love.
yeah.
and when you experience love coming back, it's very exhilarating, it's very satisfying, you know, those kind of things. When you sit down and compare the benefits of love with the risks involved in loving, what kind of things do you think you should consider?
Repeat that question again, but I didn't.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
When you compare the benefits of love with the risks,
You
what
have to,
sort of things should you consider?
Are
Different
you
things.
talking about a man or a woman, or just
Either
love
one.
in general?
There's all different kinds. There's the passionate romantic kind of love, there's brotherly love, there's the love of
Exactly.
friends, and all of that
Right.
together
Lots of
overall. What are the benefits as opposed to the risks?
I think if you're considering risk, then you're not in love.
And a lot of young people today will go into the possibility maybe of marriage, first of all, trying to list all the risks involved. And they'll have a prenuptial to make sure that they are protected from some of those risks. Well, shoot, when I got married, we must have been really stupid or naive or something. We didn't think about that kind of
So when
stuff.
we got married, neither one of us had enough to be
Were you
jealous of the
Yeah,
other.
right. So, you know,
Well, I think that's because the generation seems to be a me generation. It's all about me. So if they're gonna take the risk of getting married or having a relationship or whatever, they wanna make sure that it's what they want. They don't think about what they want together as a couple. It's just
Or what
okay.
they plan to
Or
get
as a partner, or whatever you wanna
Right.
call it. They don't.
well, first of all, you know, there's no question about it. There are risks
No, there's risk in it.
in loving. And we all know what those risks can be. They're always there. You express yourself in real love, and you're exposing yourself. And that exposure can result in you being hurt. So we all know that. That's a possibility. But do the benefits outweigh the risks? Well, you know, people who are very much in love and have a very successful marriage or a very successful friendship, for example, would say, oh, absolutely. Absolutely, the benefits are well worth it. But you talk to somebody who's been really cut to the heart, and they may not feel that way. They may tell you, I will never be in love again the rest of my life. It's not worth it. So, I mean, you know,
They've been hurt. That's
they've been
why.
hurt so bad that they're just not willing to take that risk again anymore. So, you know, there's a lot to consider here. Well, the scripture reading should be no surprise.
Is it the 13th chapter?
13th chapter of 1 Corinthians. And I'm going to read it even though we've all heard it a bunch of times.
No.
This is often called the hymn of love. And you know what? Awful lot of people consider this to be the single most important and beautiful piece of scripture in the entire New Testament. So let's listen to it again. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith I can move mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when perfection comes, the imperfect disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. Now we see but a poor reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. Like I say, for a lot of people, this is the most wonderful chapter in the whole New Testament. And what Paul tries to explain here, to start with, is why it is that love is so much more powerful than anything else. And before he does this before he even describes the qualities of love, right? You can possess any or all of the spiritual gifts, Paul says. You can possess all of them. I've never heard of anybody that did, but you could. And Paul says if they are not accompanied by love, they are absolutely useless. And he goes into a little bit more detail. He says no matter how coveted the gift of tongues may be to some people, it's nothing more than the uproar of clanging cymbals and gongs. Where does he get that from? It's an allusion to heathen worship. Heathen worship, they use the blast of trumpets and the clanging of cymbals and gongs as part of their worship. And Paul is saying that if you speak in tongues and don't have any love, then it's just an uproar like they do in the heathen worship services if love is absent. He says the gift of prophecy, for example, we understand the gift of prophecy as being the gift of preaching, right? Okay? But if the preacher dangles his listeners over the flames of hell with threats and gives the impression that he would rejoice as much in their damnation as in their salvation, well, it's a worthless gift. What good is that? There's no love. It might be enough to terrify people, but if it's not spoken in love, it's not going to save anybody. He says intellectual knowledge without love is worthless. The reason? It turns into intellectual snobbery. Right? The development of a spirit of contempt. Well, I understand certain things that you just will never be able to quite comprehend. I mean, that there's no love in that, and that knowledge has to be tempered with the fire of love, to have any significant meaning. Paul says it's even true with faith. A person can have passionate faith, but if there's no love involved, it's worthless. And as a matter of fact, I'm here to tell you that such faith can become cruel and hurtful. I'll give you an example. A person not feeling well, has been sick, totally exhausted. They call their boss and they say, "Boss, I'm just totally run down and exhausted. I need a day off." The boss, a respected Christian person, tells the employee, "I have an inward strength that makes me able to carry on when I'm tired." Well, there's faith in that.
Does the employee respond, "But you're not driving the raft"?
No, don't go there. It is a faith, but it's spoken without any love or compassion at all, and so it's of no value. Paul Paul says, even charity, the gift of charity. Without love, charity becomes what? Humiliating. I mean, giving as a grim duty is kind of like throwing scraps to a dog. It's the same as giving a smug moral lecture or a crushing rebuke to somebody. I mean, what it comes from is pride. Not really charity at all, because it doesn't have any love in it. Paul even goes on to say that giving the body to be burned, probably referring to the kind of a Christian who actually courted persecution, who actually sought martyrdom. There are people who've done that, you know. If that motivation stems from pride or self-display, the person's wanting to make a big name for themselves and go down in history as a martyr, well, that's useless. It's of no value. It is only a deed that appears to be sacrificial and has nothing at all to do with love or devotion. So, Paul goes through this whole thing, and he said, this is why love is so powerful. None of these gifts work. None of these other things are of any use unless they are powered by love, and then they become totally powerful. Well, Jim Moore, we all know who he is, right?
Yep.
Relates how a few years ago he was teaching a class in religion at Lambeth University in Jackson, Tennessee. Does anybody know where Jackson, Tennessee is?
Yep,
I do. Yeah, how come everybody knows that?
good stay there.
It's clear out on the eastern edge, right?
No,
It's in diners,
right off
drive-ins,
40.
and drives.
Okay.
Yeah.
no, it's right off 40 from.
Right on
Memphis.
40,
Yeah,
okay.
you just keep
Never
going
heard of it.
toward Nashville.
Well, I
They tried
imagine
to
we've
give
driven
me a
through it if
ticket
it's on
there.
40,
It's
but I
out
don't
there.
remember it.
It's
Get
out
on
there,
the
believe me.
line.
Brian
Just
Ross
trace
telling
there.
you something about Jackson.
They tried to give me a ticket there.
Oh, no wonder you
Oh,
remember
really?
it. No wonder you remember it. Well, anyway, he was trying to help students understand creative ways of approaching the Scriptures and to try and catch the excitement of the relevance of the Bible for our time and our lives in this age. So to try and do this, he made, and try to make it more vivid for the students, what he did, he split the class up into 4 groups. Put one in each corner of the room, and then each group was given a section of Paul's love chapter from Corinthians. And they were asked to paraphrase it by putting it into their own words. The students were simply told, read it, understand it, and then restate it in a way that makes sense to you. And when they were finished, all the paraphrases were combined, and the result was a modern version of 1 Corinthians 13. You want to hear it?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do. By the way, the title for this chapter in the Bible they came up with, Love Like Wow. And here are the results.
I don't think I know you'll like these.
Though I may be able to speak French, Spanish, and Japanese, and even rap with the angels, if I have not love, my speech is no more than a broken guitar or a scratched record. I may preach like Billy Graham and have the brains of Einstein. I may have all the faith needed to put a Volkswagen into a phone booth. But if I have not love, I am nothing. I may give the shirt off my back and even smash my Steppenwolf albums just to please my folks. But if I have not love, it does me no good. Love is tolerant and tender. Love is not stuck up or uptight. Love is not facetious or snooty or touchy. Love is not pessimistic. Love does not dig in the gutter or hunt for gossip, but rather is happy with the truth. Love never cops out. Its faith, hope, and patience never fail. Love can outlast life and the universe. People will take forever, but never get things done. The Beatles may shake the world, but it is soon spent. When perfect truth comes, life begins to take on meaning, and when love comes, the meaning of life is complete. When I was a dumb kid, my whole life was wrapped in selfishness and egotism. But now I have grown up and matured some, and I am embarrassed by and ashamed of vain self-centeredness. Looking at life now is like looking in those crazy mirrors at the carnival. things are twisted, distorted, and fuzzy, but someday God will really open our eyes, and then we will be able to see life as God intended it. Meanwhile, our survival kit must be supplied with faith, hope, and love. Love is the greatest, so put love first.
That's quite
Good,
Really is.
yeah, I like that.
And
James
this
Moore
came from a
says-
group of high school students?
No, this is college.
Oh, college,
It's
okay,
college
well,
students.
I'll cut a little more.
Probably
James-
college preacher.
Yeah, he's up over
Remember I said Lamberth University in Jackson, Tennessee?
Oh,
You already forgot about Jackson, Don
no,
had.
I've never, no, I'm more interested in what did Don mean, try to give me a ticket? No,
Yeah,
that's not
I
the
was
way it
curious
works.
about that
I
too.
went to the judge and proved that it wasn't me.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
really?
All right.
Well, now you
You
gotta
must
live
have had to
with
stay
that.
there a week or two.
No, a couple hours.
Well, James Moore says that this contemporary version, he thinks, is just about as on target as Paul's. Both of them underscored the secret of life with the single word of love. Well, love is the key to meaningful living. It is indeed the single most important thing in the world, and if we miss that, he says, if you miss love, then you have simply missed life. Period. And this is true because love is the one thing that is always right. It's always on target. And if we fail in our loving, then we have failed altogether. You may have a great education and an intellectual mind. You can give your talents and resources to worthwhile causes. You can rise to places of prominence in the eyes of other people. And you can even live an honorable and decent life. But after doing all of these things, you will still find your life to be empty. You have missed the whole point of life because you've left out love. If you were to survey hundreds or even thousands of people today who are unhappy or restless or who feel empty and unfulfilled, you know what you'll discover? The vast majority of them have never learned how to love. Puts me in mind of teenagers at the high school level who, so many of them have such a perverted understanding of what love is all about. And it's particularly true of teenage boys who believe love is all wrapped up in possessiveness, for example. You know, they've just got it all wrong. They've just got it all wrong. They would be well off to read and study the 13th chapter of Corinthians.
But would they understand it?
Yes. Love is the one quality about which we can say, if a person has this, their life is good. Without this, no matter what else we may have or what we may do, life turns out to be a failure. And that's why love is so powerful. Y'all agree with that or you disagree?
No,
Yeah, I agree.
Nobody agrees. Okay, well, that was a wasted lesson.
I did.
I think the thing about love is, though, it's not just talking about the relation between men and women or other people and their partners. It's more than that, it's love of all of God's creation, all of God's people.
Absolutely.
And it's a different, you know, now, of course,
Yeah,
love
it's
is all
not just a
different.
male-female love.
No,
No. We're primarily focusing on agape,
yeah,
Love.
in other words, the
Yeah.
love,
brotherly love.
yeah, the love, yeah.
General love, the kind of love that never wishes harm to another person, the kind of love that you always want the other person to get the best, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, okay.
Well, in order to love, you have to have a beloved, the object of it. So you can go ahead and proceed with your feeling of love, whatever that is. I don't know what that is, but you have to have a beloved somewhere. It's an object or a person or something, you know, or an idea.
Could be a brand new Thunderbird.
It could be.
I'd say mine's my husband, but my husband's his golf clubs.
His is golf clubs.
But if you go ahead and extend toward that beloved and you don't get it back, you change forever. You'll never
Right.
love the same way the second time.
Right.
I agree with everything Bruce just said, but you have to recognize that you're getting it and what it is.
Right,
Yeah.
If you're not seeing it, then it doesn't mean a thing.
right.
But I think love changes. I think that's part of maturing. You know, you start out with ribald love as youth,
Puppy love, infatuation,
All that,
everything
yeah.
keeps developing onward and
and
upward.
then, but the beloved keeps in ways that may not even know it, but it will betray that initial progression, that gift that you wanna give.
Right.
And so you're not gonna do it the same way again. Just
So
not
all
gonna
of
be
us,
the same.
when we were young teenagers, had our first love.
Yep.
And probably for every one of us, we all got jilted. We all got betrayed.
Yep.
And so how come is it that we got past that and went on?
Because we were teenagers and there was always another boy that might like you.
Oh, for Pete's sake, don't tell me that. Teenage girls think that it went like poor little Riley. She got jilted by her very first boyfriend, and my gosh, she thought she was gonna commit suicide. She was the end of the world.
And a week later, she was brought
A
another
week
boy
later,
in.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The second thought for the day is one that should really be especially appreciated by all of you here. I distinctly remember forgetting that.
That's my daily life.
I distinctly remember forgetting that. And the scripture comes from Philippians 3:12 through 14. Not that I have already obtained all this or have already been made perfect, that I press on to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me. Brothers, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Do you think that there are some reasons why we really need to forget about some things?
It's too
Oh,
painful.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Some things are very painful. And if we don't put them away, it just keeps hurting. On and on and on. Best tactic, forget about it. Put it back there where you don't think about it anymore. What else?
Well, you can put it back, or you can also learn to deal with it, because if it eats you up, whatever this thing is, that then you have gained nothing. So you have to try to get through some of the things. You have to try to, in your own mind, analyze why that happened and then go on with it. Because if you don't, if you keep dwelling on it and getting upset, then it makes you sick.
That's correct. But what other kinds of things should we forget about?
Maybe sometimes to forgive ourselves if we've sinned in some terrible way.
Slights of
Sometimes
others.
it's, if you can forget about it, if you know that God's forgiven you, you need to forget about it and move on. And
Yeah,
so-
well, if God has forgiven you and forgotten, by the way,
yeah, why should you not forget?
why should you not forget? Otherwise, you torture yourself with guilt.
Well, that's, every time you go through that feelings, like you were describing, you know immediately, if you take a gut check, you're living in the past.
Yeah.
And the way to get out of that is to make sure you go where God is, isn't it? He's in the present.
Right. And Paul says what? Forget the past.
Yeah, but it's
Move
hard to
ahead.
do, but it's hard. You gotta catch, you gotta practice.
And I'll tell you something else,
But you
guys.
can relieve yourself of it by staying in the plane with God. It
Right.
works.
Right.
It really works.
And there's something else about the past. Sometimes it's very important to forget our successes.
That's right.
Why?
Well, it's
Because of your
pride.
ego.
Pride, ego,
Yeah.
big head,
Yeah.
Resting
on your laurels,
Yeah.
all those kind. So, there are some things it's a good idea to forget about. Well, what Paul means to say here in verse 12 is that to start with, he's not by any means a complete Christian. But he says he's constantly working at it. He's constantly pressing forward. He says he's trying to grasp that for which he has been grasped by Christ. That's a wonderful thought if you understand what Paul's referring to. Paul felt that when Christ stopped him on the road to Damascus, that he had a vision and a purpose for Paul, and Paul committed himself to press on his entire life to try and accomplish that mission and goal and that purpose, lest he fail what Jesus intended for him. truth, anybody who has been grasped by Christ perceives, I would assume, that Christ has some kind of a purpose for them. And so we are all obligated to press on so that we can fulfill that purpose in whatever way we can. But then Paul says he's forgetting the things which are behind. In other words, he had no intention of glorying in any of his achievements and to use his accomplishments as an excuse for relaxing and resting on his laurels. And the real meaning of this is that a Christian must forget all that they have accomplished and remember only that what yet needs to be done. Hard thing to do. Hard thing to do. In the process of this selective forgetting, we must also reach out for the things that are yet in front of us. You know what that reminds me of? My honey-do list.
Yeah, uh-huh.
No matter how
And it
much
never
I've done,
ends.
there's always more
Yeah.
stuff being added to the list
And
by I
very
won't
important
mention
to
who.
pursue it and keep going to the
Forward.
forward.
So,
Yay,
lead us
Linda.
This afternoon.
This whole lesson has turned sour.
Nothing to look forward to here.
No.
Well, it's like the time we were talking about God is everywhere, and whenever you do the dishes, or you have to feel the presence of God. And Brian said, now don't complain about vacuuming, and just feel the presence of God. So you move forward with that, how you do this too.
Anyway, it's kind of like
Moving right along.
it's kind of like you're in a foot race, say the 100-yard dash, and you're striving with every ounce of strength you've got for the finish line. Okay, your eyes are focused on the tape. That's all you're looking at. That's all you're thinking about is just straining to get to that tape, just flat out going forward. James Moore says a great memory is a wonderful thing. And you know what? I bet every one of us wish we could improve our memories.
No,
I
amen.
sure miss mine.
And alas, our age makes it all the more difficult. But wouldn't it be terrific to have an infallible memory? Instantly being able to recall any former experience or event or impression with exact accuracy. Wouldn't that be something?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Well, no, maybe not. In truth, however, there's not a lot of really healthy photographic memories around. More often, most of us suffer from memories that fail us at the most inopportune moments. Someone has said that the mind is a marvelous thing, but sometimes a freak. The only time it ever sits down is when I stand up to speak. However important as a good memory may be, the ability to completely forget things might just be equally important.
Well, you don't want to not remember some things. I mean, like, for instance, my mother, was no longer with us, and neither is your mother. Strong people in our life, and yet I want to have those memories of our times together. I don't want to block those out.
I do too, but I do not want to remember the time that I disappointed my mother and made her cry.
No, I don't either.
You gotta be selective, you know. You may think you don't need any help in this department, because our memories often let us down at the most critical moments anyway. So, maybe you're not worried about forgetting because you figure I'm forgetting everything anyhow. We forget names. We forget names, appointments,
But we get up out of the couch.
addresses, dates, words, my own age. I sat down not too long ago to write a letter, and I hand wrote the return address on the top. It was the address I lived at in Las Vegas 20 years ago.
Is that right?
So I
Looking
did
at
that
that
when
thing
I
like, what the heck?
Where am I? How about the where am I? Where am I? How about the where am
What is
I?
wrong with you?
Oh,
Still,
I can't remember.
it can
that
be a
address.
good thing to learn to forget some stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty bad, actually.
Two men are talking. I know, that's bad. Two men are talking, all right? First man says to the other, my wife has a terrible memory. Worst memory I ever heard of. The other man says, forgets everything, huh? First man says, no, she remembers everything. Clara Barton, founder of the American Red Cross, was once reminded of a cruelty done to her. Serenely, she replied, I distinctly remember forgetting that.
That's good.
A friend said to another friend, my father taught me that one of God's greatest blessings is the ability to forget some things and go on with life. The great people have always known that there are some things you're better off forgetting. The Apostle Paul knew this. We've already talked about that. James Moore says, let me illustrate this further by underscoring some specific things that we may want to remember to forget. He said we may need to forget our past accomplishments. Past victories, if you dwell on them, can make you lazy, spoiled, and complacent. It's not healthy to live in the glow of past successes for too long. We must constantly press ahead looking for new thresholds and new challenges. We may need to forget our past hurts. We talked about this. The kind of things that tend to dampen our spirits, drain our energies, poison our souls. It's just another way of saying, don't nurse your grievances. Don't give in to self-pity. Don't wallow in your heartaches. Put all that kind of stuff behind you and get on with it. We may also need to forget our failures. There's an old song entitled, Pick Yourself Up. Anybody remember that?
Pull yourself.
I don't. It must have been before my time.
No, I don't think so.
And the song says it this way. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again. No failure needs to be final. You can always start over again. You can always make a new beginning, and you can always try again. Several years ago, there was a newspaper reporter who interviewed one of the country's best-known psychologists. And he asked this question, what is it that you try to do for these folks who come to you for treatment? And the psychologist summed up the whole thing this way. The objective is to free the patient from the tyranny of the past. That can be really important. We all have past failures that haunt us. There's no reason to allow them to defeat us. You are never a failure as long as you can say, I'm going to get up and give it another try. And this is another thing that teenagers just have a real tough time understanding. Their concept of failure is if you try something and you don't succeed, that's it. You quit. You're a failure. They don't seem to have the understanding that a failure is a person who quits trying. You know, one defeat is enough. That's it. There are kids in high school that, for example, they'll think, well, you know, I'd like to play in the band. And they'll say, you know, I'd like to play the flute. So parents spend a fortune to buy a new flute.
That's right.
And they sit down, and after a few days or weeks goes by, they say, I can't do this. And that's the end of it, money down the drain. You know, they have no concept of what it takes to really be successful. And when I talk to kids about this, I use the old example of Abraham Lincoln. You know, that he ran for public office something like 11 times in a row and got horribly defeated every single time. I don't tell them who this is. I just say there's a politician who ran 11 times, lost every time, got totaled out every time. Is that person a failure or a success? They all say he's a failure. So when he ran the 12th time, he succeeded. The 12th time he ran for office, it was for President of the United States. It was Abraham Lincoln. You just call him a failure. See, they don't get this idea that a failure is a quitter. So, some things need to be purposely forgotten. that's doubly good news for somebody like me who's worried about my memory in the first place. Maybe that's okay, I don't have to worry, I don't have to worry about it. Okay, that's it for today, guys.
Thank you, Brian.
I would have thought that dementia was one of God's blessings.
Yes, yes.